Blue Dimes Tonight quote of the day comes to us from Catholic Archbishop Carlo Viganò. In an open letter to President Trump, he said, among other things, quote, "A global plan called the Great Reset is underway. Its architect is a global elite that wants to subdue all humanity, imposing coercive measures with which to drastically limit individual freedoms and those of entire populations." Well, joining us now, Pastor Robert Jeffress from the First Baptist Church of Dallas, also a Fox Business contributor. And Pastor, great to see you. I'm always happy on a Friday, I tell you. I'm happy most days, but I have to say delighted that you're here.
Thank you.
Archbishop Viganò, that's a chilling warning that he just made. Your reaction to it and whether you concur?
Well, I agree completely, and I think what the Archbishop has said underscores the reason it is so important for people of faith to get out and vote.
The subject of my thought would be how the revolution of Vatican II serves the new world order. We live in extraordinary times. As each of us has probably understood, we find ourselves in a historical moment in time. Events of the past, which once seemed disconnected, prove now to be unequivocally connected, both in the principles that inspire them and in the goals they seek to achieve. A fair and objective look at the current situation cannot help but grasp the perfect coherence between the evolution of the global political framework and the role that the Catholic Church has assumed in the establishment of the new world order. To be more precise, one should speak about the role of that apparent majority in the Church, which is actually small in number but extremely powerful, and which, for brevity's sake, I will summarize as the Deep Church. Obviously, there are not two churches, something that would be impossible, blasphemous and heretical, nor has the one true Christ Church today failed in her mission, perverting herself into a sect. The Church of Christ has nothing to do with those who for the past 60 years have executed a plan to occupy her. The overlap between the Catholic hierarchy and the members of the Deep Church is not a theological fact, but rather a historical reality that defies the usual categories and as such must be analyzed. We know that the New World Order project consists in the establishment of tyranny by Freemasonry, a project that dates back to the French Revolution, the Age of Enlightenment, the end of the Catholic monarchies, and the declaration of war on the Church. We can say that the New World Order is the antithesis of Christian society. It would be the realization of the diabolic civitas diaboli, the city of the devil, opposed to the civitas Dei, the city of God, the eternal struggle between the light and darkness, good and evil, God and Satan. In this struggle, Providence has placed the Church of Christ, and in particular the Supreme Pontiffs, as catechon, that is, the one who opposes the manifestation of the mystery of iniquity. Second letter to Thessalonians. And Sacred Scripture warns us that at the manifestation of the Antichrist, this obstacle, the catechon, will have ceased to exist. It seems quite evident to me that the end of times are now approaching before our eyes, since the mystery of iniquity has spread throughout the world with the disappearance of the courageous opposition of the catechon. In this talk, I wish especially to deal with the relationship between the revolution of Vatican II and the establishment of the New World Order. The focal element of this analysis consists in highlighting the abandonment on the part of the ecclesiastical hierarchy, even at the top, of the supernatural dimension of the Church and its eschatological role. With the Council, the innovators erase the divine origin of the Church from their theological horizon, creating an entity of human origin similar to a philanthropic organization. When this anti-church is fully established in the total eclipse of the Catholic Church, the authority of its leaders, of the anti-church, will depend on the degree of the subjugation to the New World Order, which will not tolerate any divergence from its own creed, and will ruthlessly apply that dogmatism, fanaticism, and fundamentalism that many prelates and self-styled intellectuals criticize in those who remain faithful to the magisterium today. In this way, the Deep Church may continue to bear the trademark Catholic Church, but he will be the slave of the new order thinking, reminiscence of the Jews who, after denying the kingship of Christ before Pilate, were enslaved to the civil authority of their time. We have no other king than Caesar. Today's Caesar commands us to close churches, wear a mask, suspend the celebration under the pretext of pseudo-pandemic. The communist regime persecutes the Chinese Catholics, and the world hears nothing but silence from Rome. Tomorrow, always in view of this communion of intent between the New World Order and the anti-church, we must remember the Global Compact on Education, a project designed by Bergoglio and promoted in collaboration with the United Nations, I quote, to generate a change on a planetary scale so that education is a creator of brotherhood, peace and justice, an even more urgent need in this time marked with the pandemic. I close and quote. This project has been supported and spread to all educational institutions by the Congregation for Catholic Education through a letter that makes explicit reference to the conciliar constitution Gaudium et Spes. The Global Compact on Education, I quote, is a process of formation in the relationship of culture of encounter, also finds space in the value of common home, with all creatures, people, just as they are formed to the logic of communion and solidarity, are already working to recover serene harmony with creation and to configure the world as a space of true brotherhood. Close the quote. As can be seen, the ideological reference is always and only to Vatican II, because only from that moment on did the anti-church place man in the place of God, the creature in the place of the Creator. The bottom line of this conformity on the part of the anti-church with the dominant ideology of the modern world establishes a real cooperation with powerful representatives of the deep state, starting with those working toward a sustainable economy, involving Jorge Mario Bergoglio, Bill Gates, Jeffrey Sachs, John Elkann, to mention a few. Allow me a brief word about the political situation in the United States on the eve of the presidential election. Fratelli Tutti seems to be a form of Vatican endorsement of the Democratic candidate, in clear opposition to Donald Trump, and a few days after Francis refused to grant an audience to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Rome. This confirms which side the children of light are on and who the children of darkness are. I'm talking now about the ideological foundation of brotherhood. The theme of brotherhood, an obsession for Bergoglio, finds itself first formulation in Nostra Aetate and Dignitatis Humanae. The latest encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, is the manifesto of this Masonic vision in which the cry Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité replaced the gospel for the sake of a unity among men that leaves out God. Note that the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together, signed in Abu Dhabi on February 4, 2019, was proudly defended by Bergoglio with this word, I quote, "From the Catholic point of view, the document did not go 1 millimeter beyond the Second Vatican Council." I close the quote. Cardinal Miguel Ayuso Guizot, President of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, comments in the Civiltà Cattolica, I quote, "The Catholic Church's commitment to interreligious dialogue, which opens the way to peace and fraternity, is part of her religious mission and at its roots in the Council event." I close the quote. Once again, the Council of Vatican II confirms that it is at the origin of Bergoglian metastasis. I quote, Pope Francis' latest encyclical shows how far the present Catholic Church is from its previous positions. In Fratelli Tutti, the Pope embraced the universal brotherhood, the great principle of modern Freemasonry. Close the quote. The reaction of the Grande Oriente of Italy is not dissimilar. I quote, These are the principles that Freemasonry has always pursued and guarded for elevation of humanity. Close the quote. I remember that in the Masonic documents of the Alta Vendita since the 19th century, an infiltration of Freemasonry into the Church was planned. I quote, You too will fish some friends and lead them to the feet of the Apostolic See. You will have preached revolution in tiara and cope, proceeded under the cross and banner, a revolution that will need only little help to set the quarters of the world on fire. Let me conclude my talk today with a personal memory. When I was Apostolic Nuncio in Nigeria, I learned about a magnificent popular tradition that came out from the terrible war in Biafra, and which continued to this day. I personally took part in it during a pastoral visit to the Archdiocese of Onitsha, and I was very impressed by it. This tradition, called Block Rosary Children, consists in a gathering of thousands of children, even very young ones, in each village or neighborhood for the recitation of the Holy Rosary, to implore peace. Each child holding a little piece of wood, like a mini altar, with an image of Our Lady and a small candle on it. In the day leading up to November 3rd, I invite everyone to join in a Rosary Crusade, a sort of siege of Jericho, not with 7 trumpets made of ram's horns sounded by priests, but with the Hail Marys of the little ones and the innocents to bring down the walls of the deep state and of the deep church. Let us join with little ones in the Block Rosary Children, imploring the woman clothed with the sun, that the reign of Our Lady and Mother may be restored, and the eclipse that afflicts us shortened. May God bless this holy intention.